is now a good time to sell. I think we're at a point where the valuations and the multiples that we have in the marketplace today are going to be no different, if not could go down, but I don't see that going up. When we look at the decision to sell or to keep or to hold, it really needs to be based on where you're at in your life and how is your chain performing in the markets you're in. I would say if you're not in a position to continue to grow and be a leader in your market, I probably think it's a pretty good time to sell. If you're going to do an exit, you put a lot of passion into building your company and brand, you might as well interview your buyers. And so if you can interview a few buyers, I can tell you that at the end of the day, somebody's going to stick out and say, these are guys that we really trust and like to work with. It's not only price, but it's price, terms, and culture. I was asked, what's the number one question that I was asked at the car wash show. We just got back from Nashville, and I'll tell you from the operator side, it is now a good time to sell. And I think there's a lot of people wrestling with that question. And so as we dive in a little bit on this thing, the answer is, there's a lot of depends, right? I can tell you that if we talk about the valuation side of it and multiples, do I think things will get better? Will they go up? I think we're at a point where the valuations and the multiples that we have in the marketplace today are going to be no different, if not could go down, but I don't see that going up. All right. So I think from a valuation standpoint, multiples, I think right now today, I think this is as good as it's going to get for a long time to come. And there's a risk of things going down for sure, because if interest rates stay where they're at, or if not even ting up because of what's going on with inflation, it will affect, multiples. I wouldn't let that be your determining factor. I think when we look at the decision to sell or to keep or to hold, it really needs to be based on where you're at in your life and how is your chain performing in the markets you're in. I can tell you what we're seeing is that the big car wash chains are going to get bigger, and I think much bigger. And with scale, they have advantages over a small regional car wash chain. Right now, we're seeing them dialed in. They're doing a lot of things right. Their marketing is dialed in. Their construction, their new builds, and so before we were concerned about competition building near us. Today, it's a real factor because as we see the larger car wash chains that are growing, they're mainly focused on building out their footprint. And so as their footprint, and if you've got a car wash nearby, they don't really care. They'd like to get 20, 30, 40, 50 in a market to build up their marketing geography. They're going to go ahead and do it. They're not as concerned. So if you're in a market that's got a path forward for people to build nearby, you got to take that in consideration. You also got to look at your own succession plan. And, there's a lot of founders today that are getting, up there in age. Are their kids going to take over running the business? Who's going to run it? And so from a decision standpoint, you really got to look at the succession plan. You got to look at your team. Is your team strong enough to keep growing? I would say if you're not in a position to continue to grow and be a leader in your market, I probably think it's a pretty good time to sell. And once you made that decision, and nobody takes it lightly because this is a lot of people's life's work. This is their brand. They love their employees. They love their customers. We get it. It's an emotional decision. The good news is that, when they do sell, some of the fears that you had about your employees is not all bad. The new groups coming in can offer more opportunities because they're going to continue to grow the chain and will need more managers and more executives. So could be an opportunity. So we've seen some really positive effects to go along with obviously some negative effects of some poor leadership from some of these other groups that have destroyed some change. So I would say if you're going to make the big decision, you really want to look at sort of three things, right? We look for price. Everybody wants to get the most value for what they built. 2, terms. Terms are something that's negotiated. And so when you're thinking of it, let's say if you do cross that bridge and want to sell, the terms that you negotiate, whether it's from the non-compete to holdback of dollars in a transaction to a reps and warranty, everything's negotiable. So you should have somebody on your side that at least understands what to negotiate. The other thing probably missed by a lot of groups is culture. And what we try to do is at that point, if you're going to do an exit, you put a lot of passion into building your company and brand, you might as well interview your buyers. And so if you can interview a few buyers, I can tell you that at the end of the day, somebody's going to stick out and say, these are guys that we really trust and like to work with. So it's not only price, but it's price, terms, and culture. So that's my advice. If there's at a point where you're thinking holding because you think the valuations are going to go up, that's a myth. That's not going to happen. If you're at a point in your life where, I've got a lot of people that are looking at holding on and really trying to get the last bit of juice out of that business. I got to tell you, that's kind of a mistake to make, because at some point when you sell, you can take that cash, that money can get invested. You can sleep at night not worrying about somebody who's going to encroach on you, or let's say a year from now, whatever, something in the world, inflation keeps going up, interest rates go up or whatever, and there is no clear exit. So timing an exit, there's no direct science to figuring that out. If there's a risk. So at the risk of your future happiness, if making a decision sooner than later, I can only tell you today, the good news is that multiples are still very attractive, and that buyers are moving forward at trying to get deals closed. What happens next year, we just don't know. So that is my advice. If you're asking that question, it all depends on what your team succession plan looks like, and how you're embedded in your market and community. There are some unbelievably high quality chains that don't have to worry about problems with encroachment. You got groups like Crew Car Wash in Indianapolis. You got Metro out of Boise. I mean, these are great run chains. They don't have to ask that question. They can sell when they want to. On the other hand, if you're in a market that's, take Texas or some other market that's got a lot of deep competition, at that point, you may want to really think seriously about holding on too long, because that encroachment becomes a problem when you do decide to exit. Thank you.